I've been to 2 before. I'd like to thank Julian and the Lost Lectures team for the invitation. It's a real privilege to be here, especially with such wonderful speakers coming before me. I'm somewhere between delighted and completely intimidated. I'm here to talk about a business that I'm starting. I've been working on it for about a year, and it's all come to pass because I, like, well, apparently about half the audience here today, really love cats. And today what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about how somebody else's cat actually inspired me, discuss some of the really big worries people have about cat cafes. I'm going to talk a little bit about cat socialization, a little bit about the considerations we've taken on board for the Cat Emporium, and also a lot of cat pics. So basically, if you're finding me incredibly tedious, which might happen, just sit back and enjoy all the pictures of kittens. So, who am I? My name is Pears, as you know, and earlier this year I crowdfunded to open a cat cafe in London through Indiegogo.com, and we raised over £100,000 to do it. Currently, our shop looks a little bit rough around the edges, but we are hoping that we'll be opening sometime before Christmas. We've had a lot of excitement and, shall we say, drama with the building process, but it's a learning process and we're getting there. We've got several thousands of followers online, most of them crowdfunders who helped start our business, and they're waiting, tickets in hand, to lavish love and affection on all of our cats. And from the pictures you can see, you can't really blame them, they're amazing. So, I came to London in 2009, and when I got here I was blown away by the novelty. There were so many amazing things to do and see. Burlesque shows, there was theatre, there were live events, everything, lectures to attend. And I was having a blast, really big social life, lots of exciting things going on, but I always found time every now and again when I was walking down the street to pat strange cats. And by every now and again, it was more or less at every available opportunity. And yeah, I never really considered having a pet because I thought my life was really unsuitable. I worked really long hours, I rented, I moved a few times, I partied, I traveled overseas, and I just didn't really think that that was the right thing to do to an animal. And so I filled that animal gap in my life with cheap sidewalk trysts with strange cats. But this leads me to talk about the cat who started it all. So I actually have a little muse, and this is her. And she waits on the street corner near Mudchute Station for people to come home after work. And she just hangs about and waits for people to give her a little pat. And this is, hilariously enough, on the Isle of Dogs. So yeah, after a little while, so she was there for quite a long time, and after a little while she started to get a little bit skinny. I noticed she had like a shaved patch on her foreleg, so she'd been to see the vet. She did have an owner, she just was a bit of a tart, she liked to get cuddles from everybody. So yeah, she looked a bit ill, she was starting to look really quite unwell, and another thing started happening at the same time is clearly I was not the only one in her life, and little gifts began to pile up on the sidewalk where she used to wait. Fancy cat food brands, these like new food bowls, things filled with water, cat toys. It wasn't actually her house, so I don't think the neighbors really appreciated just all this random cat paraphernalia showing up. But loads of people had this outpouring of love for this little kitten, and she would just hang around and be there for them. I think she sort of brought a bit of sunshine to everybody's day on the way home, and she was quite special. And yeah, after a little while, the food bowls were empty, and they filled with leaves, and I think that was when I knew that she was gone. But when she inspired me, was actually one day, I kind of really hated my job. And I know you're not supposed to say that, but people don't do weird things like open cat cafes because they're happy with what's going on, so clearly I wasn't really down with what was happening. So yeah, I really hated my job. This one day, I was just totally fed up, really not happy. I walked down the street, kept an eye out for my favorite cat, and there she was. And as I knelt down to give her a pat, she jumped into my lap, and she curled up in a little ball. She'd never done that before. And she just started purring and doing like the little hand thing that cats do. And it just made my day. I felt so much better, and I felt really grateful for that really simple, uncomplicated show of affection. And it's so hard, you know, in your everyday life, you don't really get that level of simple affection. Every human engagement is complex and difficult, or you've got to think about what people really think, what they feel. But with a cat, she's like, I'm on your lap, and you know, I dig you, that's fine. And it's nice. So yes. yeah, in that moment, I thought, I really understood why this relationship was so special. And I think some people say that the relationship between pets and humans is purely symbiotic, but because it just happened to be that day and I happened to really need that, I kind of feel that humans don't really have a monopoly on kindness, and I think she was really showing me a kindness that day. So I went home and thought, how do I make this happen for other people? How do I make it comfortable so you're not sort of, as I was, crouching in a gutter with a cat on your lap? And how can I bring this over here? Because I know they have it in Japan. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to try. I'm going to try and do a cat cafe, and that is Lady Dinah's Cat Emporium. Now, one of the reasons that I went for the crowdfunding thing was also because I'd seen how my little friend had brought so much love out of people as well, and I thought, you know what, maybe this is the way I can do it. Sure enough, it worked. Now, it's not all soft and fuzzies, of course. One of the reasons I was really excited to come and speak was because it gives me the opportunity to talk about the things that people worry about. And this is actually one of our cats. His name's Donnie. The first thing I should probably do is explain in more detail what a cat cafe is. And by detail, it's actually not that detailed. It's a place where cats live and you can pop in for tea and biscuits. That's about it. It's popular all over the world. It's spreading now to Western Europe. So there's one in Austria, St. Petersburg. There's one that's open in Paris, and there's even one in the UK already in Totnes, on the west side of the country. And it's a pretty simple concept, but it does require careful thought if you'd like to execute it well. You have to be really mindful of how to keep your cat safe, your patrons safe, and your business safe. So big worry number one for everybody is, what about food and cats? And that's fair enough, as yeah, they kind of like to get in on it. So the first thing that I did was I contacted the FSA, because obviously that's Food Standards Agency. You want to find out you're actually allowed to do it. And the response was that a cat is like any other source of potential contaminant. And therefore the onus is on me as a business owner and on Lady Dinah's Cat Emporium to handle that and have adequate procedures in place to make sure that contamination doesn't occur, which is fine. So the first thing we did was like, well, obviously the issue is contaminating food, so we'll minimize the amount that food is handled. So all of our food is actually brought in off-site from local bakers and a few different ones, including vegan and gluten-free suppliers. And that's one way we actually, we just do as little as we can. The next is we had a look at our floor plan, and this is the floor plan for the Cat Emporium. It's more or less what it is now. And we looked at ways contamination could occur. So we've got cats getting into places that they shouldn't, so they shouldn't be getting into the kitchen. And we've also got cats getting all up in your cups of tea. So the third one is also staff. Staff are a source of contagion. They can touch a cat, walk into another room, touch a plate, and then it's all trouble for everybody. So the first port of call was to minimize access to the kitchen. So we've got 2 door systems. So there's no access point that the cats can be in that is less than 2 human-sized doors away from a food preparation source. So they would have to be very, very wily to get in there. And the next is sort of handled by a staff member. We've got this dedicated role called a cat carer, and their job is to make sure they're being civilized. And they're also there to make sure that humans are being civilized, because another issue we don't want is people feeding the cats human food. A lot of the very desirable foods in a cat cafe, like chocolate, coffee, cake, they're all very, very bad for cats. We've also got a couple of extra measures, so when your food comes out, you'll have a safety net over the top, and you can keep your food covered while you're there. But primarily the cat carer is the watchful eyes, and they make sure nothing goes wrong. I'm skipping all the way through my cards, I don't even know why I brought them. This cat carer also has a few other restrictions, so they're not allowed to go into certain areas. So when the cat carer is on shift, they are the ones who handle cat litter. They don't handle plates, they don't handle food. They pretty much can't touch anything except cats and cat-related waste. So, lucky them. But they also are enforcers of the hand-washing policy. And the hand-washing policy goes hand-in-hand with the food contamination issue, but it also goes hand-in-hand with another thing that people are very worried about, which is zoonosis. And zoonosis is a fancy word for things that you can catch from a cat and vice versa. And the things you have to worry about when it comes to cats are all these ones on the board. Now, most of them are managed quite effectively by hand-washing procedures. So you wash your hands on entry and between touching your food and touching a cat, and you should be okay for most of them. Others, for example, the fleas, intestinal worms, they are better handled with preventative medicine. So we have a series of preventative medical things that we do for the cats. So they all get worm treatments, they all get flea treatments, but they're also monitored on a daily basis. So that, in addition to ringworm, they're checked every morning as part of their grooming regime to make sure that they're not carrying contagions that they can then pass on to anybody else. If they are found to carry any, the first step is to isolate them. We have a dedicated isolation cat room which they can use if they're ill or if they've had some surgery. They'll convalesce in there and they'll be able to be away from humans when they're getting better. The next one, which I think is interesting for a lot of people, is toxoplasmosis. Now, a lot of people are very anxious when it comes to toxoplasmosis, and it can have some quite serious effects, especially for pregnant women. It can cause issues in the fetus, so obviously people are very concerned. But it's also a very widely misunderstood parasite. Most people actually get toxoplasmosis, if they get it, from this, which is undercooked steak or undercooked meats. And if your meat is infected and hasn't been cooked to a temperature above 100 degrees Celsius and is carrying the ochus that can give you toxoplasmosis, you can get it that way. And in fact, raw meat is how most cats also get it. And this is the way most people get it. I think something like 80% of French people carry toxoplasmosis because they like their meat. Traditionally, exceptionally rare in France. So that's the most typical way to get it. In order for a human to catch toxoplasmosis for a cat, certain things have to happen. Firstly, the cat must have an active infection. Second, they have to poop. And third, they have to have pooped 24 hours ago before, for reasons unclear to me, you get that poop in your mouth. And that's the only way you get it, is oral fecal contact. So you need to be eating poo, and we're hoping that we have something a little bit more tempting on the menu than that for you when you come by. So there's a lot of other things we need to do in terms of cat medical care, but when it comes to physical health, that's quite easy to manage with a good vet. So I'm not going to go too much into the cat medical side of things, but I will talk about another very interesting thing, which is a big challenge for us, and that is their psychological health. Now, one thing that we do say is that cat welfare is the most important thing, but that's somewhat of an oversimplification because cat welfare, patron welfare, and business welfare are all completely intertwined. So a healthy business means we can get the best for our animals. The best animals, the happiest animals we have, means we can do good things for our patrons. So all three of those things are, in our view, equally important. But critical for us is management of a multiple cat household. And they're actually quite difficult to manage in some ways. In order for cats to live well in groups, they need to be psychologically primed and imprinted from a young age to feel relaxed in a group. They also need to feel safe and in control of their environment, and they need to feel like they can move about unchallenged and find safe places to sleep. And they also need to have adequate resources. So some cats in certain conditions will naturally form a colony, but only if they have no requirement to share. There are some other things that help. Being a family will increase the chances of having a harmonious household with your cats. Having a very enriched environment, and by enriched it's opportunities for the cat to exercise the mind and body. So if they have a lot of opportunity to do that, they do tend to be happier. And I think a lot of that stuff is kind of true for humans as well. And we've actually been running an 8-cat household for about 6 weeks now, and we're really delighted with the results. We're not that delighted with the medical bills, but that's part of the job, and they've got to be looked after. But it has really been great for the cats. They've bonded in a really delightful way. We've actually found that they have made certain friendships. So some cats will get along better with other cats. So these guys are some of our family, our group Pears. We've got our 2 little ginger boys who are always playing with each other and hanging out, best friends forever. And we've got the 2 ladies. Artemis is the girl on the far left, and our little black and white who hasn't got a name yet. And they like to hang out on people's laps together all the time. These guys, you always see them together, always playing together. They have some special relationships even within their large colony group. They also have human BFFs. So little Donnie here has developed a big affection for Greg. Tends to hang out with him quite a bit. They've got a bit of a bromance going on. One thing we've also found with our cats so far, and we've based a lot of our observations on our cats in particular, is that they solicit human attention. So these guys, this is obviously they're pretty keen on talking to whoever's taking the picture right there. So they do like to go after people. They'll run to the door when some guests come with little like mews and broops and chirrups and all kinds of weird cat noises that they like to make. But we've also observed that they really need to play. So if they don't get enough contact time with humans, because they're in a confined space and they're larger in number, they actually will get more aggressive in their play with each other. So they need a lot of playtime in order to stay happy. So essentially what we've taken from this is bored cats means trouble. So another thing we have also found is that some people say that the reason we have a bond with cats and dogs and other domestic animals is because we are such effective food providers. But the thing that we've noticed is that bonds are formed much better through playtime. And it almost seems as though our cats prefer to be friends first before they want to cuddle up on your lap. And I think that's also one of those things that feels very much like humans. You want to get to know somebody before you start letting them get into your intimate places. Unless, of course, you're on sun, sex, and suspicious parents, in which case I think all bets are off. So yeah, now I mentioned earlier naturally occurring cat colonies. So they do actually happen, usually in feral colonies, and it is always when they've got more than enough food to get by. So some examples you might have heard of or seen pictures of on the internet, because they do go around. This is a picture from Cat Heaven Island, which is Tashirojima Island. There's also the free roaming cats in Rome, in the Argentine Tower and Roman Colosseum. And other examples include clouders of feral cats in farms. There's also the Canadian parliamentary cats, and there's a number of quite famous feral cat colonies. And yeah, when they have enough, they generally do get along quite well. But colony forming is not typical for cats. They did evolve originally from a solitary hunter, so it's an example of social adaptation. And another social adaptation that they demonstrate is their ability to socialize with humans, and as you can see, our guys are pretty good with that. Our research into them as socially aware creatures has been kind of inconclusive because there are two different schools of thought. Now some think black and white, cats just do not want to be around people, they merely tolerate us, and others think, obviously quite the opposite, the cats really love us and they want to be around us as well. And I think one of the reasons that we see that polarity of belief is that cats have this opt-in system. So within the first couple of months of their development, if a cat has had favorable human contact, it can be socialized to respond well with humans. But if it hasn't, it will then respond with distrust. And I think the default mode is mistrust, because obviously cats are particularly suited as a prey animal with us. They are quite small, fuzzy, they're quite fleet-footed, but although they've descended from this predator, yeah, they are prey, and they do feel surprisingly bonded with the world's greatest apex predator, and they're pretty calm and casual about the whole thing. And now they're not the only species who's done this. There's lots of other plant and animal species that have adapted in ways that allow them to get by with humans and thrive as a result. But yeah, so despite their ability to run and hide, their inability to cause us particular harm, and the fact that they're incredibly edible, they still get all up in our stuff. They persist in ruining our presentations. We still can't seem to resist them. They don't bring us much, not in the same way that dogs will help us with hunting, farming. So what is it about cats that makes us go so gaga? Now we have this chemical called oxytocin. It regulates love, sex, nurturing, bonding. It's released when you see babies, loved ones, sexual partners, friends, family, and of course pets. And particularly Petra here. Cats are neotenic, and like all of these other cuties, it tends to trigger an oxytocin response in humans. And oxytocin, being a bonding chemical, compels us to feel particularly close. And neoteny is also a behavioral characteristic. So cats that are raised in an environment where their needs are provided for tend to also display behavioral neoteny. So that's adult cats behaving like little kittens. And all of this adorable combo just releases all this oxytocin for us, and we end up with a cultural stereotype, the crazy cat lady, because cats essentially can steal our hearts. I do have some final considerations that we had to think about when we were designing the Cat Emporium. These resources that I'm clicking through behind me are the resources that are of a special value to cats. And we need to make sure that they have all of these resources, not only in adequate supply, but in abundant supply. We need to make sure they have their convalescent spaces, that they're able to sleep out of the eye line of other cats. We need to also have, amusingly enough, a toy rota which manages habituation and prevents them from becoming bored with their toys. And the list, quite honestly, goes on. So I'm going to leave it there, and that's us. Please do feel welcome to follow us online if you like, and I've put a link up there which is a link to all of the papers and documents that we've been reading on cats' behavior, socialization, and all manner of things, neoteny, and everything. So yeah, if you're interested, that is there. And also, here's a picture of some cats, and I'm going to leave it there.